Everyone's cooing at the dog, the room is melting, and you're just standing there feeling absolutely nothing. You're not cruel. You're not broken. You just don't feel it. And you've probably spent years wondering why you're wired so differently from everyone around you. Well, today I want to show you something psychology has been sitting on for a while. The psychology of not liking animals, and what it actually says about the kind of person you are. There's this unspoken rule society has: love animals, especially dogs, or something is wrong with you. You've seen the look, that split second judgment when you say, I'm not really an animal person. Suddenly you're explaining yourself to a stranger because you don't want to pet their dog. And the worst part? For a second, you actually start to wonder if they're right. Like maybe you're missing some kindness gene that everyone else got. But here's the thing, no one actually bothers to ask. Why does not liking animals have to mean anything at all? We don't question why someone doesn't like roller coasters. We don't diagnose people who hate the ocean. But the moment you say you don't feel that deep connection with animals, suddenly you're a case study. And honestly, that says more about social conditioning than it does about your character. Because here's what psychology actually found, and this might change how you see yourself. Researchers studying attachment patterns found something fascinating about people who don't bond with animals. It's not about coldness. It's about where your emotional system learned to direct its energy. See, attachment is a system, not a switch that's on or off, but a channel that gets tuned early in life. And if your early environment was mostly human connection, that's where your attachment wiring points. You didn't fail to develop empathy, yet you just developed it in a very specific, human-focused direction. This is called selective bonding, and it shows up in some of the most emotionally intelligent people studied. John Bowlby, the psychologist who essentially built modern attachment theory, was fascinated by this selectivity. He noticed that some people bond with incredible depth, but only where they feel genuine resonance, and forcing connection where that resonance isn't naturally present. He called that emotional misdirection. In other words, pretending to love something your system doesn't connect with is actually more emotionally dishonest. But there's another layer to this, one that's even more personal and even less talked about. Some people experience sensory information, sounds, smells, physical touch, at a higher intensity than average. The unpredictable movement, the smell, the fur on your skin. For high sensitivity people, that's a lot of data to process. And here's what research on highly sensitive people, or HSPs, have been found. Sensitivity doesn't look like weakness. It looks like someone who has an incredibly fine-tuned radar for their environment. Always reading the room, always aware. Elaine Aron's research found that HSPs make up roughly 20% of the population and are disproportionately thoughtful, creative, and emotionally deep. They also often have more nuanced boundaries, including around physical contact and unpredictable stimuli. So when a dog jumps on you and you pull back, that's not cruelty. That might just be your nervous system doing its job. And you've probably spent years apologizing for a response that actually takes quite a bit of self-awareness to even notice. But wait, because there's something even deeper here. Something about how you handle emotions in general. Think about the people in your life you're genuinely close to, really close to. I bet there's real depth there, real emotional investment, real attention to how those people feel. Because people who don't scatter their emotional energy across everything, they tend to go very, very deep where it counts. Psychologists call this concentrated relational investment, and it's associated with higher emotional intelligence scores. You're not emotionally unavailable. You're emotionally selective, which is actually a much harder thing to be, because anyone can scatter their love across a room. It takes real emotional discipline to be intentional about it. And here's the part that almost nobody talks about: the link between this trait and a very specific kind of empathy. People who don't connect easily with animals often report a much higher level of cognitive empathy for other humans. Cognitive empathy is the ability to accurately read another person's internal state, their mood, their needs, what they're really saying. It's different from emotional contagion, which is just feeling what others feel without much processing. And people with high cognitive empathy often find animal behavior, which is less predictable, less verbal, harder to tune into. It's not that you don't care, and it's that your empathy is calibrated for language, for context, for nuance. And animals don't communicate the way your system is wired to receive communication. That's not a flaw in your design. That's just your design. But let's go deeper, because there's a cultural story here that's been running for thousands of years. Humans and dogs co-evolved for roughly 40,000 years. So the bond many people feel is literally genetic. That means if you don't feel that pull, you're not missing something everyone else has. You're just expressing a different genetic variation. Evolutionary psychologists note that a significant portion of every population has always been less oriented toward animal bonding. Because in a tribe, you needed hunters who didn't get emotionally attached to animals. You needed people oriented toward the group. Your ancestors who were like you were the strategists, the mediators, the ones who kept the human bonds together. So the next time someone looks at you like you're missing something, you can carry this. Now, here's where it gets really interesting and honestly a little unexpected. Research on the Big Five personality traits found something specific about people who report low affinity for animals. They tended to score higher on openness to experience, particularly in abstract and human-centered thinking. And interestingly, they also scored high on conscientiousness, meaning they were deliberate, careful, and selective about their energy. Deliberate, careful, selective. You know these words, don't you? You've been living them your whole life. The way you form friendships. Slow, deep, not scattered. The way you loved, focused, specific, real. The way you feel things, quietly, deeply, without needing to broadcast it. All of that is connected. It's all the same system. There's one more piece of this I want to share because it changed something for me when I first read it. People who have clear, defined preferences, including about what they connect with, tend to have something called boundary intelligence. Boundary intelligence isn't about being cold or closed off. It's about knowing exactly where you end and the world begins. And people with high boundary intelligence are often the most reliably present in the relationships they do choose. Because they don't spread themselves thin. They don't fake connections. What they give, they mean. The people lucky enough to be in your close circle, they know this, they feel it. Now, to be fair, because I always want to be honest with you, there is a version of this that's worth watching for. Not connecting with animals isn't automatically a superpower. Sometimes it can point to early emotional disconnection. If you also find it hard to feel joy in small moments, sunsets, music, a warm meal, that might be worth exploring. That's a different conversation. And if that's you, that's not a flaw either. It's just information. But if you feel warmly toward people, laugh easily, connect deeply with certain humans, then none of this is a red flag. You're just a person who loves specifically. And that is so much more honest than performing love for everything. You know what's interesting about the people I've observed who don't like animals? They tend to be incredibly loyal friends, the ones who actually show up when things fall apart. They tend to be the ones who remember the thing you said 6 months ago that you forgot you even told them. They tend to be the ones who notice when something is off, before you even say a word. That's not a coincidence. That's the same wiring. That's cognitive empathy at full capacity. The very thing that makes animal bonding feel unnatural to you is the same thing that makes you read people with startling accuracy. And in a world that desperately needs people who are tuned into other humans, that's not a deficit. That's a gift. So here's what I want you to take away from all of this. Not as a defense, but as a truth. Not connecting with animals doesn't make you cold. It makes you specific. It doesn't make you broken. It makes you precise. It doesn't mean you're missing empathy. It means your empathy has a focus. And the world does not lack for people who love everything equally. What it's missing, what it has always been missing, are the people who love deliberately. And that person, the one who chooses where to place their heart, who feels it deeply when they do, that's you. If this video made you see yourself a little differently, even just a little, that's exactly why I made it. Because this channel exists for one reason: to help you understand yourself. Not the version of you that performs for everyone's approval, the real one. If you've been carrying this question your whole life, wondering why you're wired differently, I hope today gave you a little peace. Drop a comment below. What's one thing in this video that hit differently for you? And if you know someone who's been made to feel bad for this, share it with them. Quietly. Subscribe if you want more of this. We're building something real here. And until next time, take care of yourself the way you'd take care of someone you actually love. See you in the next one.